Way of the Peaceful Warrior by Dan Millman. Picture this. It's 3 in the morning. The world's tucked away in sleep. Everything's quiet. You're this young guy, right? Peak physical condition, a world champion athlete. People admire you. Success is basically your middle name. You've got everything you thought would make you happy. So here's the weird part. Why can't you sleep? Why do these nightmares keep haunting you? This dark, hooded figure, like death itself, is whispering your name. This is where Dan Millman's story kicks off. Something's gnawing at him from the inside, so he leaves his bed and wanders the empty streets, until this fluorescent glow from an all-night gas station catches his eye. He's just looking for a snack, maybe something to quiet his mind. But what he finds instead? This old man, just sitting there in the shadows, with white hair that practically glows and eyes that look like they've seen every secret the universe has to offer. Dan's completely thrown off. This man, wait, he's the other guy from his dream, the one who actually laughed at death. They have this bizarre conversation, full of riddles, and this kind of teasing laughter that pokes holes in everything Dan thinks his life is about. Frustrated and a bit freaked out, Dan decides to leave. He walks maybe 20 steps, glances back over his shoulder, and the old man has vanished. The chair's still there, leaning against the wall like nothing happened. But the man? He's standing on the roof of the gas station now, arms crossed, staring up at the stars. Impossible, right? No ladder, no sound, not enough time. In that single, mind-bending moment, Dan's perfectly organized world starts to crack wide open, leaving him with one question that'll completely transform his life. Who on earth is this guy? That mysterious old man, who Dan eventually names Socrates, is the beating heart of the book we're diving into today, Way of the Peaceful Warrior. This isn't your typical self-help book. It's become this quiet legend that's been passed between people for decades, selling millions of copies, not because of some flashy marketing campaign, but because it taps into this deep hunger we all share. It's Dan Millman's semi-autobiographical novel, based on these extraordinary events that started for him on that strange night. What if the secret to living powerfully and joyfully isn't about crushing your goals, but about how you experience each moment along the way? What if your biggest battles aren't happening out in the world, but right inside your own head? And here's the really wild part. What if you could learn to be genuinely happy right now for absolutely no reason at all? That's what this journey promises. Stick with me, and you'll discover the wisdom of this guy who worked at a gas station but somehow understood the universe. You'll learn what separates a fool who just reacts to life from a warrior who truly acts. And by the end, you might just find the key to unlocking your own inner peaceful warrior. Our story opens with young Dan Millman, who looks like he's winning at life from every angle. He's studying at UC Berkeley in the 1960s. But more than that, he's a world-class gymnast. Championships, international travel, trophies practically spilling out of his room. He's talented, recognized, successful. Life looks like one victory after another. But underneath all that shine, something's off. This unspoken sadness starts creeping in, this feeling that even with all these achievements, something crucial is missing. It shows up in his dreams, where he's being stalked by this terrifying figure of death. Night after night, he jolts awake, sweating, heart racing. It's like he's been asleep his whole life, just dreaming he was awake. On one of these sleepless nights, at exactly 3:20 in the morning, he stumbles into that all-night gas station, and boom, his life changes forever. The old man he meets is this complete mystery. He's the guy from Dan's dreams, the one who faced death and just laughed about it. Dan, acting on pure impulse, calls him Socrates, and somehow the name just fits. This first meeting is total chaos. Socrates talks in riddles, making fun of how seriously Dan takes his problem-filled life. He seems to see straight through all of Dan's carefully constructed image. And then comes that impossible moment, the leap to the roof. It breaks every rule of physics. Dan's logical mind goes into overdrive, searching for explanations. A secret twin? Hidden ladder? Some kind of trick? But Socrates just laughs at his desperate attempts to make it all make sense. That's actually the first lesson, though Dan doesn't realize it yet. Socrates is showing him how limited his thinking really is. Dan believes he knows things, but Socrates challenges everything. The world's a puzzle, he says. No need to make sense out of it. Pulled by this mix of irritation and intense curiosity, Dan keeps returning to that gas station. He's a world champion in his own arena, but here, he's just a student, a complete beginner. Socrates starts dismantling Dan's reality, piece by piece. He demonstrates what Dan's mind is like with this simple but powerful image. While filling a car's gas tank, he just lets it overflow, gasoline flooding everywhere. He turns to Dan and says, "Like this gas tank, you're overflowing with preconceptions, stuffed with useless knowledge. Before you can actually learn anything, you'll need to empty your tank first." Socrates tells him that real wisdom doesn't come from books or experts, but from inside yourself. The secrets of the universe, he explains, are imprinted right on the cells of your body. He calls this body wisdom, this deep, intuitive knowing that goes way beyond intellectual understanding. He draws a line between understanding, which is just this flat mental concept, and realization, which is this three-dimensional experience involving your head, heart, and body all at once. It's the difference between reading about driving a car and actually feeling what it's like behind the wheel for the first time. The lessons are often baffling and completely unconventional. One night, to demonstrate body wisdom, Socrates leads Dan into this dark back room, building up all this suspense, only to flip on the lights and reveal they're in a bathroom where he proceeds to use the toilet. "Ah," he says with satisfaction, "now this is body wisdom." His laughter bounces off the walls as Dan storms out, totally frustrated. Through all these strange encounters, Socrates is trying to show Dan one fundamental truth. His mind is his real problem. If you don't get what you want, you suffer. Socrates explains, if you get what you don't want, you suffer. And here's the kicker. Even when you get exactly what you want, you still suffer because you can't hold on to it forever. The real prison isn't out in the world. It's this chaotic parade of regrets, anxieties, and fantasies that Dan mistakes for his mind. His gymnastics, his social life, they aren't real joy, just addictions he uses to distract himself from all that inner noise. Socrates' goal is to give Dan the greatest gift imaginable, disillusionment, freedom from his illusions. To do this, Socrates uses these things he calls journeys. He places his hands on Dan's temples, and suddenly, reality completely shifts. In one journey, Dan finds himself perched high in the rafters of a gymnastics stadium, watching an international competition. He's given these binoculars that let him actually hear everyone's thoughts below. He learns this profound secret. The best performers have the quietest minds during their moment of action, complete silence. The audience's minds, though, they're these chaotic storms of worries, fantasies, and distractions. For the first time, Dan understands why he loves gymnastics. It gives him these few precious moments of silence from his own noisy mind. In another, even more intense journey, Dan becomes the wind itself, sweeping across the entire planet. He experiences every human life, every moment of joy, every cry of pain. He sees that everyone, everywhere, is trapped in this same search, hunting for security, for purpose, for happiness that's always just around the next corner. And he sees that the source of all this suffering is the human mind. But the most jarring journey is this thing Socrates calls a little surprise. Dan falls asleep and lives out an entire possible future in a single, hyper-realistic dream. He marries his college girlfriend Susie, makes the Olympic team but doesn't perform like he'd hoped, and slides into this life selling insurance. His marriage crumbles, he grows distant from his son, and he ends up old, lonely, packed full of regret, wondering where his life disappeared to. He dies with this terrible fear that he missed something vital. Dan wakes up back in his college apartment, young and healthy, trembling with relief. Socrates explains that this dream was the actual future he was headed for if they'd never met. It's this stark warning: change now, or this becomes your reality. The training gets more intense. Dan meets Joy, this mysterious and playful young woman, who seems to be another one of Socrates' students. She's a woman warrior, and Dan falls for her immediately. During a picnic, this sudden rainstorm ruins their plans. Dan gets upset and angry, but Socrates and Joy? They just laugh. Socrates points out the lesson. The rain didn't cause his suffering. His thoughts about the rain did. His mind, not the world, creates his moods. This lesson hits its peak when Socrates and Joy deliberately push Dan's buttons, criticizing him until he explodes in this fit of anger and self-pity, storming out of the station and swearing never to return. He feels like such a fool, especially in front of Joy. He tries diving back into his old life of studies and training, but it's useless. The world seems hollow now, colorless. His friends notice he's becoming withdrawn and gaunt. He's caught between two worlds, with no real foothold in either. His breakdown peaks with this public humiliation. During a packed lecture, he stands up and yells "bullshit" at the professor, trying to explain the real truths he's been learning. But the class just laughs at him, and he realizes his fly's been open the whole time. Completely mortified, he runs out, his self-image shattered into pieces. He spirals into deep depression, stops eating, stops caring, ends up on the edge of suicide. In this final act of desperation, he returns to the station. He tells Socrates he's ready to end everything. That's when Socrates takes him on another journey. Dan finds himself on a high hotel ledge, trying to talk this other young guy named Donald out of jumping. As he pleads with Donald, listing all the reasons to live, he finds himself arguing for his own life. In the final moment, as he looks into Donald's eyes, the face changes. He's staring at himself, the illusion vanishes, and he's alone on the ledge. He slips and falls, only to wake up safely on the couch in the gas station. He's made his choice. He's going to live. But just when Dan starts feeling like he's making real progress, life delivers its cruelest punch. He's back in Los Angeles visiting his parents, riding this new motorcycle he just bought. He feels on top of the world. As he enters an intersection, a car suddenly turns left directly in front of him. No time to swerve, no time to think. The world explodes in crunching metal and tinkling glass. His right leg shatters. His body somersaults over the car and crashes onto the concrete. He wakes up to this searing, unbearable pain. He sees the white bone of his leg sticking out through his boot. The dream of being a champion, the Olympic future. It's all over. In the hospital, the doctor's prognosis is grim. He tells Dan it's unlikely he'll ever do gymnastics again. This becomes his ultimate test. Lying broken in that hospital bed, Dan gets a visit from Joy. She tells him this story from Socrates, this parable that becomes a cornerstone of his new understanding. It's about a farmer whose only horse runs away. His neighbors say, "What terrible luck." The farmer just replies, "Good luck, bad luck, who knows?" A week later, the horse comes back, leading 5 wild mares with it. "What amazing luck!" the neighbors exclaim. Again, the farmer says, "Who knows?" The next day, his son falls trying to tame one of the mares and breaks his leg. "What terrible luck!" they say. Soon after, the army comes to draft all the young men for war, but the son gets passed over because of his broken leg. "Good luck? Bad luck?" Joy tells him, "There are no accidents, Danny. Everything's a lesson. Trust your life." Pain, she explains, can actually be used. It purifies both mind and body. This accident isn't the end of his training. It is his training. Humbled and broken, Dan starts this long, painful healing process. He loses 30 pounds. His leg looks like a stick. He throws himself into rehabilitation with a warrior's discipline. On the beaches of Santa Monica, he trains his upper body until he looks carved from marble. He forces his leg to work, always pushing right to the edge of pain. The accident that destroyed his body becomes the fire that forges his spirit. After months of grueling recovery, he returns to Berkeley, leaning on a cane. He goes back to the station, back to Socrates. He's no longer this arrogant young champion. He's a fool with spirit, and that, Socrates says, makes all the difference. It's now that Socrates tells him about the gate, this hidden realm of the warrior that exists inside him, which he has to find on his own. The training becomes even more demanding. Socrates initiates this, quote, complete overhaul, rewiring all of Dan's old habits. This means a strict diet, celibacy, and these frustrating exercises in breathing, posture, and attention. Socrates is relentless, criticizing every tiny mistake, pushing Dan to his breaking point over and over. A warrior isn't about perfection or victory, he says. It's about absolute vulnerability. Dan's will gets tested when he meets Valerie, the beautiful nurse from the hospital. She represents every temptation he's been asked to give up, and for one night he caves, breaking every single one of his disciplines. He confesses to Socrates, bracing for anger, but Socrates simply asks, "Was that really your best?" He sends Dan away for a month, telling him to come back only when he's reclaimed his will. This failure becomes Dan's turning point. He recommits with this new intensity, choosing his training over temptation. He realizes he's no longer a slave to his random impulses. The training escalates. Dan learns martial arts, meditation, how to feel the subtle energies in his own body. He learns to enter this state called satori, this moment of pure presence, where you forget yourself and become one with the action. This, Socrates explains, is that feeling he's been chasing in gymnastics. The goal is making satori an everyday reality. One afternoon in the gym, Dan decides to test his recovery. In front of his shocked coach and teammates, he performs a complete routine on the floor exercise, then the rings, then every other event. He's not just recovered. He's better, stronger, more focused than ever. The impossible has happened. His comeback peaks at the national championships. The final event, the high bar, will decide the winner. To win, Dan needs a near-perfect score, higher than he's ever achieved. As he steps up to the bar, his mind clears. The roaring crowd fades away. There's no past, no future, just the bar, the movement, and this moment of truth. He performs the routine of his life, this flawless sequence of motion, and sticks the landing perfectly. The gym erupts. He's won. They're champions. But in the aftermath of this ultimate victory, this profound emptiness sets in. He's achieved the goal that drove him his entire life, and he's no happier for it. He finally sees the illusion he's been chasing. Happiness through victory. It's all been a dream. He returns to Socrates, disillusioned and lost. Socrates laughs. "You're right on schedule," he says. "Now it's time to lose your mind and come to your senses once again." He sends Dan on a journey back to his infancy, to a time before words and concepts existed, when everything was experienced directly, brightly, alive. The birth of the mind, Socrates explains, is the death of the senses. The final goal is returning to this state of pure perception, becoming like a little child again. The training now turns inward, toward the final search for the gate. Dan leaves his life behind and heads into the Sierra Nevada mountains, to a place Socrates once mentioned. He feels he'll either find his answer here or die. High in the wilderness, Socrates appears to him one last time. Dan confesses his failure. "I have nothing to bring you," he says. "Life has broken my heart." "Yes," Socrates replies, absolutely jubilant. "Your heart's been broken open to reveal the gate, shining within. It's the only place you haven't looked." Socrates leads him to this sacred burial ground, into a deep, dark cave. As a thunderstorm rages outside, Socrates warns him, "There's not much time left. Eternity's not far away." He grabs Dan by the neck and crushes his skull. This is the final journey. Dan's body gets pushed over a precipice, falls and shatters on the rocks below. But this isn't the end. His consciousness remains, watching. He observes as his body decomposes, becoming food for birds and insects, returning to the earth, nourishing flowers and trees. The seasons flash by in a blur. The man named Dan Millman is gone forever, just this fleeting moment in time. But the eye that observes it all remains unchanged, eternal. He realizes that death, that specter from his dreams, was the great illusion. His life, his ego, his fears, all just this humorous incident when consciousness forgot itself. He wakes up on the cave floor, smiling. Socrates is sitting nearby, his eyes gleaming. They both know. They dance around the cavern, laughing wildly at Dan's death. The gate has opened. And here's the joke. It was a gateless gate. There was never anything to search for. He was already free. He's filled with this energy and joy he's never known. He's overflowing with happiness for absolutely no reason at all. This is the final teaching. Act happy, be happy, without a reason in the world, Socrates tells him. Then you can love, and do what you will. His work with Dan complete, Socrates makes his final mysterious exit. After sharing his life's journal with Dan, he walks into the back room of the gas station, and with this flash of light, he's gone. Dan's left alone, but he knows he's not. Socrates is everywhere, in the wind, the trees, the clouds. He's finally come home, not to a place, but to a way of being. The search is over. He's become a peaceful warrior. The story ends, but the journey's just begun, as he steps back into ordinary life, armed with this extraordinary peace. So what do we actually take away from this incredible story? At its core, Way of the Peaceful Warrior is this powerful reminder that the most important journey you'll ever take is the one inward. We spend so much of our lives chasing things, grades, trophies, promotions, relationships, believing that once we nail them, then we'll finally be happy. Dan Millman had it all. He was a world champion, and it left him completely empty. His story forces us to ask this difficult question: what are you really chasing? The book's most profound lesson, I think, is this distinction between achievement and happiness. Socrates teaches that happiness isn't some reward you collect at the end of a long struggle. It's not something that happens to you when circumstances finally line up perfectly. It's a discipline, a choice. He calls it unreasonable happiness, this ability to be happy right now, for no reason at all. It's the ultimate warrior move, because it means you're no longer enslaved to your circumstances or to the chaotic chatter in your own head. Think about that beautiful parable of the farmer. Good luck? Bad luck? Who knows? We're so quick to slap labels on events in our lives. Success is good. Failure is bad. An accident is terrible. But the warrior sees that life isn't that simple. Every event, no matter how painful, contains a lesson. That motorcycle accident that ended Dan's career was the exact thing that broke him open and allowed him to rebuild himself, not just as an athlete, but as a complete human being. It was the bad luck that led to his greatest good luck. This perspective can change everything. It transforms you from being life's victim into being life's student. So how can you start applying this today? Here are a few simple ideas drawn from the warrior's path. First, practice this art of here and now. Several times today, just stop whatever you're doing and ask yourself two simple questions. Where am I? And what time is it? The answer is always identical: here and now. This simple exercise works like an anchor. It yanks your attention out of the past where guilt and regret hang out, and out of the future where anxiety and fear live, and plants you firmly in the only moment that's ever actually real: the present. This is where your power lives. Second, start observing your mind without obeying it. Socrates described the mind as a wild horse. You don't need to kill the horse, but you do need to learn how to ride it. For just one day, try watching your thoughts like they're clouds passing in the sky. Notice them, but don't cling to them. You are not your thoughts. You're the one who's aware of them. Creating that small space of awareness is where true freedom begins. And finally, look for the gift hiding in your struggles. The next time you face a challenge, a disappointment, or something you'd label as bad, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I use this? A warrior doesn't go looking for pain, but when it shows up, he uses it. This completely shifts your relationship with hardship. It's no longer something to run from, but something to transform. That was our journey through Way of the Peaceful Warrior by Dan Millman. We've explored the main path of the story today, but I need to be honest with you. A summary can only ever be a map. It can't replace the actual experience of walking the trail yourself. The real magic of this book happens in those quiet moments, when one of Socrates' riddles, or a simple story, suddenly clicks into place in a way you didn't expect. This summary is meant to give you a sense of the terrain and help you decide if this path is one you want to explore. If anything we've talked about today has stirred something inside you, I really encourage you to pick up a copy. Reading it isn't just about collecting new ideas. It's an experience that can genuinely change how you see your life, moment by ordinary moment. And if you found this summary valuable, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss our next exploration into another life-changing book. Let's keep walking this path of growth together.